I just finished recording the most fabulous conversation. It was called Man to Man Talk, and my husband Rod and I were on the call along with doctors Kate and Victor Mangona. And we talked about, well, actually, I interviewed, and the men talked about what it's like to be married to a fiery, driven, ambitious, personal growth-oriented wife, and how they find their place to catch up and adjust. That's not the language we used in the conversation, but that's really what inspired the conversation. And then we went on to talk about how to integrate after personal growth retreats, experiences, whatever it is that you go on, either individually or together as a couple. So I'm just lit up. My husband and I are both feeling amazing, and Kate and Victor are too, because it was such a generative conversation. And so as soon as we finished, I just immediately thought, I want to share it with you on the podcast and on YouTube so you can enjoy this really beautiful, soulful, manly conversation. Welcome, everybody. We're so glad you're here. This is absolutely the first time that we've done anything like this, and I've never heard of it happening anywhere. For those of you who don't know, well, any of us here, I'm Alexandra Stockwell, and my husband Rod is in a different room because he thought it would be weird to interview him sideways right here. And Victor and Kate Mangona are in Kansas City. We're in California, prepared to have really an amazing conversation. And while I'm doing the talking now, it's the men who will be doing most of the talking. So I just want to set the expectations so we all know a little bit about what's happening. Yes, this is called Man to Man, a locker room conversation for the husbands. And I expect this will be extremely worthwhile for any husbands who listen. And if you're a wife, you get to benefit too, but I invite you to be more in listening mode. You will learn so much from what these men say and what they don't say and how they say it. So if you have a burning question, you can post it in the chat, but really it's your turn for listening and learning in a really unique way. I'd like to just open it up. I'll start with you, Rod. Will you share what you do for work, where you are in terms of being introverted or extroverted, and something you find annoying about your wife?
I work as a pain management doctor, and I also have training in family medicine and holistic medicine. Oh, I'm an introvert. That's the second question. And I would say the fact that you don't like bananas is so disappointing to me because I enjoy them a lot.
Okay, well, that is a great example of something I will never change for you. I will do all kinds of things for you, but I will never enjoy bananas for sure. Okay, Victor, what is it that you do for work? Where are you in terms of being introverted or extroverted? What is something you find annoying about your wife?
Okay, so I am a radiation oncologist. We've both finished training 9 years ago now, almost 10 years ago. Oh no, almost 9 years ago. Let's see. I'm definitely born introverted, but as I've gotten older, have moved more to the middle of the road there. And then I can't think of a single thing here. I am
think of a single thing, but I've got like 100
like 1,000 things. I'm supposed to live and basically not exist in the house. I'm not supposed to like make sounds. I'm not supposed to breathe.
He chews really loud with his mouth open. That's what it is.
I'm not allowed to walk when people are sleeping. I'm not allowed to go into the bathroom. Not allowed to make a single sound. As a living human being, she grew up an only child, and she says, I'm really good at sharing, which is a really, red flag when someone says, well, but I know how to share. That's yeah. So she's an only child by nature. You can only change so much over time. But yes, I constantly get reminded that I'm a living human being.
I want this to be a real conversation. Like, let's not pretend everything is so fabulous, even though both Kate and I share a lot about what's fabulous. We want people to know what's possible. And with what you said, talking about Kate as an only child makes me think, why don't you tell Victor how many children you have and how old they are and their genders? We have a beautifully mixed audience. And so even though the two of you are extremely famous in certain circles, there are people here who don't know these kinds of things about you.
Yes. So we have our first child was our adopted 2-year-old poodle, who is now approaching 9 years old, or maybe approaching 10. And then we have 3 children, 3 girls, almost 7, almost 5, almost 3. So currently 6, 4, and 2, but they will all have birthdays within the next 3 months.
Okay, sounds like a lot of parties to come. Rod, how old are your children? Our children, but you go ahead.
27 and 25 are already out of the house for some time, and 18 just graduating from high school, our third, and then 12 is our current, soon to be almost only child in the house.
Okay, well, actually, let's go ahead and start there. How was it for you, Rod, when we went from not having children, which was actually a very short amount of time, to becoming parents in terms of your experience of our marriage and your place in our family?
I think I was very passive at that point in my life. So part of my experience was just, oh my, here's one more. We met in medical school. And so there was all of the crazy busyness of medical training happening. And then towards the end of that time, our daughter was born, our oldest. And so really it was sort of like there was no normal to compare it to, but it definitely, I remember the feeling that Victor was describing of there are so many rules and I'm just trying to figure out what to do and how to do it right.
And where were you going to find out how to do it right?
Well, I got better in a medical context at figuring out what the rules were. I always just like wish someone would hand me a manual like you get when you buy some do-it-yourself kit of like, this is how you're supposed to do things. But they didn't do that in the beginning of medical school. So I had to figure that stuff out on its own. But it meant that when we were creating our own marriage culture, and it was this odd blend of my family of origin and your family of origin and what we thought was good and what we thought we wanted to do differently or better, that whole tendency of, well, just tell me how to do it right and I'll follow the rules, meant that you wound up being in the rule giver category.
Yes, which is such a fantastic position when you have answers and such a burden when you want a really great marriage. So thank you for presencing that. I feel like one of the most important shifts in our marriage is that I'm no longer the expert about everything, and I am so grateful for that, even though I think you're wrong a lot. So, Victor, how would you summarize how things shifted for you in terms of becoming a father and what it meant in your marriage and in your position in the family? It's a more recent transition for the two of you.
Well, I've always looked forward to being a father, so I was very excited about it and the role. I know Kate reminds me of this discussion we had many years ago, but I had dated a lot before her, and I could imagine myself having children and having being a dad more than I could envision myself actually finding the right person and being with the right woman for forever, because I hadn't met Kate yet really at this time. But in this time I was like searching, and I was like, oh, I could have like a 5-year-old kid. And that just felt like a very normal thing to me, even way before I had children. And now I have kids who are 4 and 6. And to me, it's amazing. So it's kind of the role that I had been always like looking forward to. So to me, it wasn't that much of a change. But yes, as the family grows, then yes, there are all these additional responsibilities, expectations, rules, or lack of rules, which make things more challenging, because I'm like, well, just can you tell me what to do or what not to do so I know what to do? Because I still have to remind her I will never be able to read her mind. And no matter how long I've known her, I still am surprised about things, and I cannot actually predict her. So I need to just often be told directly what she wants in order for me to do what she wants.
Okay, beautiful. So I think that sets the context fairly well for really one of the most significant questions that I want to ask both of you, which is, so I'll start with you, Victor. So Kate dives into the coaching world like there's no dipping a toe in. She literally submerges and starts running. She like essentially signs up for a triathlon between all the different coaching programs and Tony Robbins. And, you don't go to that and then expect to come home and pick up where you left off. So what was that like for you? And actually, before you answer, I really want to ask anyone on here, particularly the men, when your wife returns from a personal growth experience, what impact does it have on her, on you, and on your relationship? Think about that anytime, whether your wife has gone away for like a church weekend immersion for women, or she's gone to Date with Destiny, or she's enrolled in a 6-month coaching program, like whatever retreat or other experience she's had. What was the impact like for you when she came home? That's for everyone present. And when you watch the replay, consider your answer. Okay, wonderful. So what is your response, Victor?
Okay, so to the initial question, first, when she said, I want to do coaching, I was like, we have a bajillion things to do. Why are you choosing to do something additional on top of all these other things that we basically do not do? Like we can't keep up with our day-to-day life. We can't read emails. So we're often like, oh, we completely missed this thing going on because nobody read that email. And this is just literally a day-by-day normal for us. So I was like, why are we doing something else? But she wanted to, if she stuck with it and has been dedicated to it, and it's important to her. So I've supported that, and it's been very meaningful to her and to our marriage. And that has had more value than anything else. So at the beginning, it's a transition and it was a surprise, but I
didn't realize that.
As long as she's going to stick with it and it's going to be meaningful and do something, then fantastic. But I don't like to do things that don't have value, aren't meaningful, and just end up using our time, or things that are very short-lived and kind of burn out. But she's been doing this for years now, so she's really, really dedicated, and I'm very glad that she's continued to pursue this passion.
You being so supportive of your wife, it's really beautiful to hear you articulate that. And it sounds like it's worked out. But was there any time when you wondered, are you supporting her because you love her, but really we're going to just wish we never did this?
Well, I mean, I'm her spouse, and part of being in a marriage is, first of all, we have to think ourselves as independent people, but then also as a couple. It's important for me as a husband, knowing she as an individual wants to do something, that's important to her. And if it's important to her, it's important to me. My role as a spouse is not to take away from who my wife is as an individual, and vice versa. This is how relationships have to be successful long-term. We both have our individual goals and our couple goals, and supporting both of those things is what fosters sustainability. But as a coach and in diving into this entire world, it has had incredible benefits on our marriage, directly/indirectly. And that has been incredibly valuable, irrespective of anything financial. That has more benefit than anything. So definitely have had a value in it. I mean, I went through coaching as well and derived a huge benefit from it. But her going through coaching and continuing to learn and also to foster with others has continued to help us individually and as a couple.
It's amazing. The first question I wanted to ask you is, did you just pop out of the womb having this wisdom? How did you learn it? But I actually am not going to ask that question because I want to manage the time well and ask you, could you say one or two specific things that are ways that your marriage has benefited? Because there's so many men who really are uncomfortable and scared when their wives take on something new. And so it's hard, like we can feel it because of the energy between the two of you and your tone of voice, and you're a genuine man. But what's something specific that has improved in your marriage as a result of Kate diving into the whole world of personal growth?
Well, one of the things that I've learned, and I've going through a lot of these, or as I've learned more, we can only really change other people by changing ourselves, right? And you can't really change other people. Like I've always thought that, you could write a book, How to Change a Man, and it would be like a page, and it is, you can't, because you just can't change. You can't change a grown man. Like they're adults. Like it's too late for that. Right. But you can change yourself, and in keeping that may actually influence your spouse, but it may not, but it also influences back to yourself. And as she went through coaching initially and she changed herself, I realized, oh, she's a completely different person now. And it made me a different person around her. And it made us better people around each other. And so it did directly have that benefit. But yes, it really comes from yourself first. And, you can be the best person possible. And if you're trying to have positive effect on the other person and that doesn't happen, well, you can't change other people, but you can change yourself. And that is really the best way to have, again, sustainable change in your relationship over time. And it's all from yourself first.
Beautiful. I'm not going to repeat the question, Rod, because I know that you have a sense of it, but I am reminded hearing Victor speak of how when we lived in the Boston area and I did a 4-weekend training, 1 weekend a month in New York, I remember I went to the first weekend and it was just phenomenal. I felt so alive, so inspired, I just felt magnificent. And by the time I walked in the door, when I drove back from New York to the Boston area and came home, I just felt like I had gone back to being exactly how I was before I went. And my goal the next time was to sustain it long enough to when I walked in the house. I didn't know how long I could have it, but at least it wouldn't drop back to my before less alive and inspiring presence. And I consciously worked on being able to bring it home, but I didn't bring it home immediately. Like that's a whole skill. So I just want to add that and turn it over to you because you know what we're talking about here.
Well, there's a few things I want to say. One is that if you go and have an experience like you just described and come back invigorated, I think that's a different thing than you going and coming back and saying, I'm going to start a new career. Like there's this new path that I want to take in my life. Or I'm changing the church that I believe in, or whatever, like something that's going to clearly impact our day-to-day life. And I think my initial experience in that kind of situation was, well, before you left, the two of us together had these 5 plates spinning. And you left, and I did my best to hold those 5 plates spinning. Now you came back, and you're bringing in the 6th one. Did you forget about those other ones? Like, I think that was the part that I wanted to do, is to just talk about what does this mean, not for the new thing that we're starting to grow, and like, can I help you with that, or how can I help you? But part of the answer to that is how is it going to impact all the other things that we have going on? Are we just going to give up on these three things, or are we going to somehow try to do them all together? When we could talk it out and I could picture what was going to happen with the other stuff, the like boring things that we had actually working before, then it was much easier to be supportive of this new endeavor.
Okay. And actually, I want to ask what you would say the difference is between when I go and do something amazing. And by go, I suppose these days it means virtual sessions or actually going somewhere and having an amazing, expansive, mind-blowing, identity-evolving experience when I do that versus the times when we've gone together.
Right. That was the other thing I wanted to talk about, because I feel like I'm thinking of this, I think it was 11 years ago, we went together on this 10-day retreat together. And
right. It was the first time that we did anything like that. And it was a big
huge
step
to try to arrange that with all of our young kids and have someone to take care of them. Like, that in itself was a huge process. But one of the reasons that was so valuable from my point of view, was because we got to have, like, I think one of the things that happened to us, and I was describing in the beginning a little bit, was like, we got stuck in certain roles, like the role of you saying how things ought to be, which was a little uncomfortable for you at times, and the role of me being the implementer and like following through on those rules. And you could get tired of being in that role, and I could feel like a lack of freedom. I felt like, it's the same old thing. So part of going on this retreat together, we had the opportunity to have new experiences, but also together we tried out new roles, new ways of being in relationship to each other. And then it was much easier, I felt, to bring those into our marriage going forward, because we had a kind of a concentrated experience to antidote the old habits. Because otherwise it's so easy to come back and just fall into the old habits again of how the same old roles that we used to be in.
Yeah, and I think the two of you have actually, Kate and Victor, you've gone on a lot of different retreats together. I don't know how often it's been focused on your marriage. Do you want to speak to that and what that meant? And I'd invite Kate to chime in too after you, Victor, on this question.
We might end up having different answers here.
Great. That's why we're doing this, because the men have different answers.
Yeah. Okay. I can't think of, we often go with each other to conferences in general. It's often
this is medical conferences, real estate investment what kind of conferences?
Yeah, everything.
Financial real estate, physician real estate, financial.
Yeah. So, and even like our own professional conferences, we used to, just go with the other person because it's like, oh, we can take the trip and have the hotel. This is back when we were, more pre-kids than it is now. But yeah, no, when we had the opportunities to travel together, then we can explore and get to go to a new place and be together and somewhere. So we try to, in general, go to conferences together whenever it's possible. Kate's been going to more conferences. Her conference attendance velocity is accelerating and accelerating.
Said like a radiation oncologist calculus.
Yeah, I cannot keep up with that many conferences. I'm like, no more than one a month could I consider really going to. We've gone through multiple Tony Robbins conferences, one in person and one virtual. She's gone to other virtually without me when I couldn't go to another conference in the same month. We did one in Maui last year together, which was amazing. That was a couples one. So we've gone through, we've gone to numerous, and every time we go on a conference that's for personal growth, relationships, those are incredibly valuable. Those are probably the best, most valuable conferences overall and of anything we do. Professional conferences are what they are, and but they tend to move the needle more incrementally. Whereas these can really move the needle a lot because it's an area that in our lives that we don't spend that much time in, right? And so you can really just focus on that part, and that actually moves the needle a lot further than a lot of the other things that we might do.
Kate, I'd love to hear what you have to say. And
yeah, so I mean, pre-COVID, they were almost all medical conferences from our specialties or real estate conferences. And then, I mean, Victor really introduced me to super powerful people by going to these FinCon, Financial Podcaster Conference, and real estate conference before COVID. Once COVID hit, and then I started joining all these coaching programs because I knew the people Victor had introduced me to in this kind of other world. It's just like the feeling of being with these people who ask powerful questions instead of sitting in like complaints, or just staying stuck or staying in a rut. The energy you get from that leaves you so high, when you were going from Boston to New York, and that feeling is so addicting. And then I feel like when you come home, the more you do it, the better you get at really living at that energy level instead of dropping back down to maybe energy neutral. And so I really owe Victor a huge thanks for introducing me to this world. And he probably doesn't realize it. I mean, it drives so much of who I am in like my community, and all the personal growth stuff we do, couple growth stuff we do.
In smaller, intimate couples retreats, I think one of the unexpected delights for me anyway, and with you, Rod, is that either we meet couples who are just so inspiring and that really helps us, or we meet couples who have challenges that we don't have or we don't have anymore. And that also has us feeling really good about our relationship. So I feel like the well-curated, especially smaller couples retreats, have this incredible impact just because how else are you going to know what other people are genuinely navigating? And
I want to say something about that actually, because while you were talking, I was thinking about how much of my week I spend with the social mask on, like being the doctor or being appropriate in this context or that context. And there aren't that many places in my week, in my life, when I can take that off and just be myself, so much so that I sometimes don't know how I feel about something or what I want until I deliberately have that space to think about it or talk about it with somebody. And can I really be honest about whatever I think or don't think without being judgmental? And so I think it's a great skill when in a couple we can provide that for each other. There can be space for you to actually explore what you feel or and vice versa when you can do that for me. But and I speak for myself, I learned that from being in this kind of more intimate environment that you're talking about, where there was it was like a place where someone else went to the trouble to set the tone that we could be honest here and there wouldn't be consequences of going outside the narrow rails that I normally keep myself in.
Yeah, I think you're a really good teacher, probably because it didn't come easily and you needed to really consciously get there. What would you say for somebody who wants to be able to make more room, either for themselves or specifically for their wives, to express more without it being terrifying, confronting, causing shutdown or defensiveness? I know it's a little bit in a different direction than we were going, but I wonder if you could share.
Well, there's two sides to that. So in order for me to make room for you or for my wife to express more, explore more, however you want to say that, I had to stop the previous pattern that we were just talking about earlier of you tell me what you need and I'll go do it. You tell me how you want things and I'll go do it. I had to stop that. Instead, I had to take on a new role of just being the listener. I'm not going to do or not do anything based on what you're saying. I'm just going to let you say and feel and think whatever is coming up. And then, in an hour or 2 weeks or whenever, we can have a separate conversation about what is going to happen or what we're going to do or not do. But I had to learn to keep those two things separate because I was so used to going from tell me what the expectations are and I'll try to meet them. And so I had to learn the skill of just what I call holding space, like just listening. And I'm going to be immovable. I'm not going to move. I'm not going to get up from my seat and go and if you say, I'm thirsty, I wish I had some water, I'm not going to go get the water. I'm just going to actually listen to you say what's true for you. That's a totally different skill than I had beforehand.
Anything you want to add to this topic, Victor?
Nothing except for the holding space thing, because people would keep saying this holding space. I'm like, what is this most abstract phenomenon that you women are talking about? I'm holding space. Like, okay, that's amazing. Congratulations. But now I understand it better. So, and I understand there's a lot more value in this. And yes, being a good listener, an active listener, I'm still working on this whole idea of active listening. But yes, no, these are very valuable skills, which I continue to work on.
And then the flip side of that, I'm just going to say the other half is to actually ask and have someone be able and willing to do that for me, or to sit down with a journal and do it for myself. And I'm just going to write out for myself because I'm an introvert, so I don't like to always do it socially, to write out for myself all the things that I'm thinking and feeling on a topic as a way for me to actually find out what they are. Or if there's someone that I can say, I'm asking you to just listen to what I say. At the end, just say thank you. Don't act, don't think one way or the other. I'm saying stuff, I might mean it, I might not mean it. If you can just for the next 10 minutes, just listen to whatever I have to say, it'll give me a chance to just see what's coming up. And asking for that and thinking that that's something I can actually ask for, that's allowed in the culture of our marriage, that's the flip side of it. So I get the experience too.
Amazing. I think my experience as a relationship coach is I just think it is so fun to see a man's expression when he hears, sometimes for the first time, that if a woman says something that's problematic in any way, it doesn't mean it's his job to fix it. In fact, he may have something much better to offer, which is exactly what each of you have already expressed in your own words. Now, I wanted to go in this whole direction because there's no question, I know this from talking to Kate, that whatever it is that any of you listening are hearing in our husbands, one of the really significant portals, one of the significant developmental steps in getting there has been the couples retreats we've gone on. And this is one of the biggest inspirations for Kate and me and Victor and Rod to be co-hosting Honeymoon 2.0, the retreat that we're doing at the Four Seasons in Maui in October. So I want to answer a number of questions that we've received that pertain to the topics we've been talking about. We want to get into this, whether or not you join us at Honeymoon 2.0. There's something here in how to take the next step, how to do something new that takes you out of your usual experience in order to really cultivate, nurture, and enhance your relationship. So
I just want to say that the obvious negative that comes to mind for me when you start to talk about that is, if it's mostly my job to do stuff, to implement things, to, take out the trash each week and do all these little jobs. And the result of going on this retreat is I'm just going to get more stuff I have to do. And I'm already feeling kind of overwhelmed and burnt out from doing all the regular things. Why would I want to go and hear that there's more stuff I have to do and I'm not doing this right and I'm not doing that right? That sounds really unappealing.
Okay, well, sweetheart, what is your response to the person who has that question as you formerly did?
And so the way that I would respond to that question, thank you, is if you and your partner, let's say it's a couple that are thinking of going on this retreat you're talking about, our retreat, if that's the way you're treating it, as if you're going to go to this retreat and she's going to get to do more of what she always does and you're going to get to do or have to do more of what you always do, then that's probably not the retreat for you, because that's really the opportunity of being on this Honeymoon 2.0 is to have the opportunity to try out other ways of being together and to learn new ways of being together so that you have another option besides just doing more of the same old thing. It's actually much more regenerative to have a new way of doing, to try out new options and find out what actually works better, what is more nourishing on the inside when it's a safe space. And then it's much easier to implement later. We practice it at the retreat so that we can then do it ourselves at home because we've already done it the first, second, or third time in the retreat environment.
Yeah, and I want to add that when there's more ease in the relationship, when there's more emotional intimacy, connection, and closeness, and also more erotic energy, more passion, a lot of the tasks, at least for me, and I'll ask you if this is the same for you, Rod, a lot of the tasks just don't seem as burdensome. I don't feel as resentful about all the tasks I have to do when things feel really good between us. It's like this whole other fuel source. So I definitely think of an experience like Honeymoon 2.0 as an investment, and the ROI, it's really immense. It's like infinite, because when the marriage feels juicy and aligned and however it is that you want it to feel,
nourished,
then everything else is so much easier.
Right. When I'm getting all of my needs met, I have much more to offer, and what I have to offer is much easier to give. And so making sure how to have all my needs met and have that be part of our marriage, foundation is so helpful.
Kate, Victor, Kate, anything you would say about, well, you went on, I'm looking forward at some point to hearing more about it, maybe not necessarily right now, but the two of you went on an intimacy retreat specifically. Did you come back with more things to do, even just in terms of the logistics? Like, do you have to schedule more date nights and more this and more that in order to maintain what you learned? And it's been this logistical burden?
Hasn't really been a burden. It's made our relationship much better. This is a silly analogy, but I remember going to the orthodontist once, actually, as an adult. Okay, this is totally random, but Kate and I were going to go on our first trip to Napa Valley. Okay, we've never been there before, being more from the eastern part of the country, don't really go to California. But my orthodontist said, yeah, my friend went to Napa and he came back and he said, this was the most expensive vacation we've ever been on. I was like, why? I mean, it's like not that expensive, although it is pricier than some parts. He's like, it's not the cost of the trip, it's the cost of wine for the rest of your life. Because the person who drank a $10 bottle of wine, they're now drinking $25 bottles of wine. And the person who drank the $25 bottle of wine now wants to drink the $100 bottles of wine, because you become trained into wine. You learn more about it, and it's just an ongoing thing. You just change your standard. And it's funny that I remember this because it was just a random off the cuff statement, but it's interesting how we kind of remember some of these things, these anecdotes. But yeah, it's a similar thing. You go to something like this once, and if it can change a habit in your life, then it's not really a burden in terms of, doing this or that. It becomes just a change in what you do and who you are, and it makes things better. It's like, I hate to even say a chore. Things aren't chores, but if you don't do your laundry, you never have clean clothes, right? I mean, you have to do some things to keep things working, but it's not even like that. It's just it just changed our relationship. So similar to when I first did coaching the first time during COVID. I mean, it was a one-time coaching program, but those benefits continue because it changes the way you think about things, and you it changes you. And those are the things that are the most incredibly valuable. Now, I am looking forward to Honeymoon 2.0 because then it means I get to marry my second wife. Okay, because I'm getting to that age, and
Your 2.0 wife.
yes, yes. So yeah, and it's funny. We joke about this more because our kids are going to this school where, and there's a lot of people on their second round of children. And I was like, well, I get to marry my second wife. You can be my second wife, and we can go on our second honeymoon.
You know, Victor, I love so much what you've said, especially about the wine. We live about 20 minutes from Napa, and that totally hits home as a clear analogy. But I also want to say that I've heard multiple people talk about we're all married to multiple people during our lifetime. It's just some of us are lucky enough for it to be the same person. And I love how you've said that. Kate, anything you want to add in terms of, really, this is responding to Rod's concern that going on a retreat means the to-do list is longer when you get home because you learn new skills and you have to schedule them in and have more responsibilities.
Yeah.
Which is true with some medical conferences. At least it used to be soon after training. But what about with Honeymoon 2.0 and relationship and intimacy as the focus?
Yeah, I'm going to echo. It's changing your lifestyle, your marriage style, your relationship style. It's not adding another thing to the checklist. And so, I mean, I had no idea what we were getting into when we signed up for the intimacy retreat we went on in Maui, but it just puts ideas and perspectives in your head. And even like I was a marriage coach for 3 years before I went on this, and I still got so much out of this because there are just certain things in our busy day-to-day lives we don't necessarily sit down and talk about unless it's in that dedicated, 2-day, 5-day experience. It's just the setting that and the energy amongst the small group of people you go with that bring things to the surface that really enhance your relationship, for the rest of the time you're together. And like he was saying about, the neighborhood we happen to live in, and a lot of people on their second wives, I mean, it's true. This is prevention. Like, I am well aware of why these things happen. The resentment that builds up, the lack of playfulness, the lack of romance, these things we just lose when we're just so tied up in the day-to-day, whether it's our career or real estate or kids. And unless we intentionally decide to be in this headspace and surround ourselves with other people in this.
And not just headspace, heart space, genital space.
I want to share an analogy because let's say I'm riding my bicycle. That's my vehicle. And it works okay for me. And then if I need to take the kids to school, I can put one of them on the back and one on the handlebars. But then if I need to also carry, the groceries home, I have a backpack on and a thing on my shoulder, it gets to be really cumbersome. I can't fit it all. And it is a lot of work. It's a lot of struggle. But at the point that I can change the vehicle from a bicycle to an SUV or a pickup truck, suddenly all those things that were so burdensome before are really easy. And so if you change the vehicle of your marriage, then it recontextualizes everything else. And that's kind of why this is not just picking up more things and trying to balance them on the bicycle. There's the masculine version.
Exactly. So, and I want to pivot to the next big question that people have, not everyone, but a lot of people who actually are super interested in what we're offering and being in paradise and the whole thing. But the idea of going on a retreat with other couples whom they either know or they don't know, it's different considerations either way, and focusing on the kinds of themes we've been talking about, how to upgrade the vehicle of your marriage, how to transition and pivot to $100 or $1,000 bottles of wine as your normal intake, just drawing on the analogies, how to be in the right headspace and more. How do you think about doing that in the presence of other couples in the way that we are setting things up with this magnificent couples retreat, Honeymoon 2.0? Victor, do you want to speak first?
Yeah. So first of all, when I first heard about this couples retreat, what came to mind was the movie, which apparently Kate had just recently watched, called
Like a few weeks ago. Yeah.
called Couples Retreat, I think.
Oh.
Have you not seen it,
No,
Alexandra?
I clearly
Oh.
need to.
Yeah.
It is
But
really
I
fun.
assume it's not exactly what we're talking about.
No, it's a comedy, but it's funny because all these couples go there, of course, per the name. I won't give away the whole movie, but part of it is that the leader is this Greek god yoga teacher type of person, and all of the women are just falling for the teacher, and all the husbands are just like, what is going on here?
As he's practicing yoga poses on them.
Physical, 2-person yoga. It's really, I mean, it's so egregious that it's like farcical, right? It's just it's hilarious.
Yeah, but I love that you bring it up, because that, not exactly in terms of a Adonis teacher, but the fact that being in that context would actually have a couple end up more disconnected rather than connected. I think that's a real concern that movie has tapped into.
Yeah, so it's not going to be like that. I'm assuming, but it is nice having groups for things, because there's a lot of I don't like to use the term peer pressure, but you get positive feedback, and you see other people doing things and making improvements, and it's kind of just like exercising with other people. It's like, oh, we're all getting in better shape together, and you get that group, and everybody feels good about getting better at playing a sport, or whatever it is that you're doing as a group, that you don't necessarily get when you do things individually. And there's benefits in both, but it is nice to have that group feeling, and it's easier to jump into a lot of ideas when you say, oh, we're in a whole different atmosphere where everybody's in this space together.
I think the sports analogy is actually a really good example, because it does take a little bit of courage to get out on the field and play soccer or baseball, for the first or second time. If you're not an athletic person, it takes a certain step to be willing to do it. But then at the point that you're there with other people, you can support each other, and it makes it easier because you don't have to do everything on your own. And you can see how someone else is doing it and then learn from them, and it makes it quicker for you. And so in that sense, it's like a sport kind of environment in a big way. And the other way that it's like that is because it completely matters who the coach is, who is the team captain. Are they setting a tone that people are working together towards a common goal, or are they creating an environment where people are crossing inappropriate boundaries or not paying attention to half the people in the room? It really matters who is going to be your guide on the field. And at the point that you find someone that you trust and can believe in as a guide, and take that step to get on the field, it winds up creating all kinds of opportunities to improve faster because you're doing it in a team environment.
Yeah, and I want to add 2 more things that haven't been included in your answer, but I think are really important that people don't necessarily anticipate being important. And that is that, especially if you're a man and for weeks, months, years, decades, you've been hearing from your woman how you're supposed to be, and you're sick of it, and it doesn't work, and you don't even know what she's talking about. Having that just completely removed from the relationship so the 2 of you can be on the same team, can be receiving the relief for both people to have someone else guiding the process who probably is going to see more anyway, is of immense help. And the other thing that I want to say, I guess we didn't say this earlier, the 2 of you, Kate and Victor, you've been married 10 years, right? Is that right? Yeah, I knew that celebration's coming. And Rod and I have been married for 28 years, so we're not dumb about this, to put it quite frankly. So Honeymoon 2.0 is designed so that there's like casual time where you can be with other people if you want to or not if you don't want to. There is structured time where we will be coaching and guiding things, and there's lots of time just for the two of you, because this is Honeymoon 2.0. Like, a lot of the important parts of this retreat are going to happen by yourself behind a closed door. This is not actually publicly working on something that belongs just to the two of you and always has. We're really excited about Honeymoon 2.0. Like, it's such an incredible opportunity for everyone who comes, including the four of us. And one of the things I love about this conversation is this is our debut as a quartet. We'll be collaborating and guiding things together in Maui, but this is our first time and it feels amazing. And I'd love to hear from most of you have been on the whole time. Would you please post in the chat one or two things that you're taking from this conversation, something that's meaningful, insightful, an aha, something you're taking from the conversation. And then I'd love for each of the four of us to just round things out. And I'll start with you, Kate. What are you taking, or what else do you want to contribute to this conversation?
I never realized that when I first went into or said, hey, I want to be a coach, I never knew Victor's thoughts. Never. Like, it's been 4 years and he's never shared that with me, that he was concerned, it was going to be a fleeting thing, or that he was concerned maybe we had enough going on, right? We have 1,000 plates spinning above our heads. And the fact that it has changed our life so much, us both being in the coaching world, me becoming a coach, making us both better people. Just like, I don't take that lightly. Like, that's a huge thing. I knew there was a reason I was supposed to do this. And although it's not like we're bringing in the big bucks coaching, I'm not rolling in dough over here as a marriage coach, but it has set our relationship up for success for years. My children who watch us as a couple, it's setting them up for success to see what this looks like, and what being supportive of individual goals. Like, coaching was not a goal of Victor. It's been watching that so that they can move forward in their relationships, and then then our future grandchildren. I just feel like it's so delightful.
Wonderful. Well, I love collaborating with you. Victor, what would you like to add as we wind up?
So I like how you added that on on your previous statement about how you can relieve some of this like forever stress that you've always been carrying. And let's just say, imagine you get that out of your relationship, how much better relationship would be. I often tell people the best thing for our marriage is way before coaching, but our first year married and moved into our house, our first house that we bought, and it was just the two of us and maybe the dog at that point, maybe even not the dog, but
our second year of marriage.
Yeah, we were spending our Saturdays cleaning this house. It's like, this is the biggest waste of time. And the worst part about it was I became the object of her opposition when I wasn't cleaning the way she wanted things to be cleaned. And I'm like, my idea of clean is clutter-free, and her idea of clean may be clutter-full, but bacteria-free. One is good to the eyes and the other is good to, your immune system. But we hired a housekeeper, and I never had a housekeeper my entire life. Not once did somebody come into our house and clean. And it was like $120. And we're both attendings at this point. And I was like, she came the first time, and I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And it was amazing for two different reasons. One, the house was clean, but two, now if there was a problem with it being clean, it wasn't my fault anymore. Everything was the housekeeper's fault. So now you could just deflect everything to her, and it's like, not my fault anymore. I was like, I'll pay this for perpetuity to not be the blame for a problem that will never disappear. Like housekeeping and cleanliness are not things that you can fix one time and are done. But this was like a solution forever, although there is ongoing cost. But literally, this has like been removed from our marriage as a stressor.
So good. Rod?
Well, actually, what I'm taking away from this call is I'm looking forward to getting to know Kate and Victor better. I haven't hardly interacted with the two of you, and I think we're going to have a really fun time. And I'm looking forward to meeting the other folks that come too.
Fantastic. And I think I'll wrap it up by saying something I've said so many times before, but it's always true and relevant. And that is that having a fantastic relationship is a learnable skill. And I feel like every single thing that we've said on this call are sharing how we learned the skill of having a fantastic relationship, which may not sound that sexy, but is fundamentally at the root of Honeymoon 2.0. And there's plenty there that is sexy, being at the Four Seasons with a 50% discount in Maui with absolutely fabulous people. So if you want one of our few spots that are left, be sure to join us, alexandrastockwell.com/honeymoon. And if you want to continue this conversation, join us there.